Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle, and this is the week 1 wrap-up video for March Mystery Madness. We are already 1 week into March Mystery Madness, and I have been having so much fun. There are so many people that are joining in and participating, and there is so much chatting going on in the comment section, in videos, over on Discord. If you haven't joined on Discord yet, you really should. It's so fun. People are chatting about the books that they're reading. There's a spot over there to do reading sprints. It has been so much fun. And yesterday, there were so many live shows to watch related to BookTube. It was fantastic. And then yesterday evening, I did my very first live, and it was so much fun. We did reading sprints. We chatted about the books that we were reading, about mysteries. It was so much fun. So thank you to everyone who joined me for reading sprints. And I will be doing another live show this coming Saturday, this time at 1 o'clock Central, so that those who are in the UK and in Europe, that might be a better time period for you guys to join us. I would love to have you join me. We'll chat more about mysteries, and we'll do some more reading sprints. It was so fun. All right, so before I get into the books that I read this week for March Mystery Madness, I need to show you what I found that matched the criteria from our last round of the March Mystery Madness M&M manuscript matchup. Now this time we needed to find a book that had red on the cover and had a person of color as the detective. So I'm going to go for The Unexpected Inheritance of Inspector Chopra by Vaseem Khan, and I'm going to put the picture here. I don't have a copy of this book, but I think I will be buying this book. I love this series. Inspector Chopra is a detective in Bombay, and Mumbai. He's in Mumbai, and I love that series. Yeah, it was, I mean, so far I've only read the 1 book. I've got the second one out right now from the library, and I'm going to be starting it very soon. But I loved the writing style. I loved Inspector Chopra. I loved being introduced to Mumbai through his eyes. It was just, yeah, I really enjoyed it. And then I actually have a second book that I can show. This is In the Company of Cheerful Ladies by Alexander McCall Smith. This is part of his #1 ladies detective agency. So here's some red on the cover. These pants are red, and the detective in this is a private detective, Precious Ramotswe, and these are set in Botswana, and I love this series as well. Interestingly enough, when I started reading The Unexpected Inheritance of Inspector Chopra, I said to my husband, these feel a lot like the #1 Ladies Detective Agency series. There are definitely differences, but there are some similarities in how much they love where they live, the main characters. That comes out really strongly in the books, that they love where they live. They love their country, and also just, it's sort of gentle. Now, the Inspector Chopra isn't quite the same, but I love the storytelling way. It's a little bit, it's not slow, but it's kind of like just this gentle way of telling the story, and I love it. Okay, so stay tuned to the end of this video, and we will do another round in the Marvelous and Magnificent March Mystery Madness M&M manuscript matchup game, which has been really fun to play, by the way, and I'm so glad that you guys are playing along with me. Okay, so I read Green for Danger by Christiana Brand. This, of course, is for the prompt color. This also happened to be the book that came up in the BookTube spin, so this worked out really well. This was written in 1944, and I quite enjoyed it. I will definitely be reading more Christiana Brand. This is set in a military hospital during the Blitz, and I found that setting really interesting. I really enjoyed how she wrote this story. And so what happens is a patient dies under anesthesia, and later the presiding nurse who was in that surgery in the operating theater is murdered. And so of course the detective has to come in and investigate. So you get that whole like investigating a murder during wartime, which is really interesting. I mean, that's the whole premise behind the show Foyle's War, which I really love. And there are only 6 possible suspects. So I loved the closed circle aspect of this book. One thing that I wasn't a huge fan of, and I'm curious to see if this happens in her other books, is there was a good amount of like kind of the romance of the people. You know, one girl was like so in love, head over heels in love with this guy, but he didn't love her back. And there was one girl who was engaged to someone, but kind of like flirting with another guy, and like this was like ongoing throughout the book. And I mean, that's fine, but I don't, you know, I tend to prefer less of that in my mysteries. So I'm curious to know if that kind of thing pops up a lot in her books. But this was really good. It was a solid mystery, really interesting, good clues, lots of red herrings, and the detective at the end, his way of like wrapping it up was really interesting. I don't want to give too much away. The other thing that I found fascinating and unexpected in this book is that there were illustrations. Look at that. So, and I couldn't figure out, this edition that I have obviously is not a first edition or anything. This was from 1997, but these look to me like original manuscripts, or not manuscripts, original illustrations. So I'm really curious to know, because it's not super common for books of this era, 1944, to have illustrations like this in them. And so I just thought that was so interesting. So if anybody knows anything about these illustrations, or you know, what publisher maybe was more common in putting illustrations in, I'd love to know. If you could let me know in the comment section down below. So yes, Green for Danger, Christiana Brand. And then I read Death by the Light of the Moon by Joan Hess. This was for the prompt space, because the moon is in space. This is a book that I had on my shelves. I found it at a book sale I got it for pretty cheap. And I've read this is from her Claire Malloy series, and I've read a whole bunch of those books, but not this one. This was one that when I looked at it, I realized I somehow missed it in my read through. So Claire Malloy runs a bookstore in her town in Arkansas, and I can't remember what it's called. But in this book, her and her daughter, so she's a widow, and her daughter get invited to her mother-in-law's 80th birthday. And her mother-in-law, who is called Miss Justicia, lives in Louisiana. So they travel to Louisiana. Miss Justicia is gathering the family for her 80th birthday, and she is also making noise about changing her will, which is never a good sign. So this was just a fun, quick, easy read. It had gothic elements, which I liked. The house was kind of like one of those creepy houses, and the family that was gathered, you know, there were members of the family that were, you know, a little bit icky. And so some good suspects, because of course Miss Justicia ends up getting killed before she can change her will. Classic, right? So yeah, I was glad to read this, and I'm going to throw it in our little free library. So to update you on then my bingo card, I've got 2 prompts filled in so far for color and for space. And the book that I'm reading right now, whoops, and I'm very close to finishing it. That was a big mess there. I am reading Death in Springtime by Madeline Knabb, and this will be for the prompt time. Obviously, time's right there in the title. But I'm about 50 pages away, so I'm going to have to save this one for my wrap-up next week. I also started my Mammoth, which was Vintage Mystery and Detective Stories, edited by David Stewart Davies. This is a massive book. I'm buddy reading this with Berna from Berna's Bookish Adventures, and I've read 2 stories in here so far. The first is The Purloined Letter by Edgar Allan Poe, classic. That's set in the late 1800s in Paris, and the detective is Dupin, Auguste Dupin. And so yeah, that one was good. I'd read that one before, so that was a reread for me, but I read it years and years ago, and I enjoyed it, although there was a part in there where he was explaining, you know, how he solved the case. That was good, but there were parts where I felt like he was giving a lecture as opposed to just telling the story. But that was okay. And then the second book, the second story in here was Silver Blaze by Arthur Conan Doyle. So that was a Sherlock Holmes story, which I loved. And so that was the one about a racehorse gets kidnapped, and it's not its owner, but it's like the guy who took care of it is killed. And it happens in Dartmoor, or near Dartmoor, I think. And so that was a really good one too. I quite enjoyed that one. I love Sherlock Holmes stories. But that one is where I was reminded where a really famous phrase comes from that story. And so the Colonel is asking Sherlock Holmes, "Is there any point to which you wish to draw my attention?" And Sherlock Holmes says, "To the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime." "The dog did nothing in the nighttime." "That was the curious incident," remarked Sherlock Holmes. So there you go. If you've ever wondered where that came from, Silver Blaze by Arthur Conan Doyle. So I've also created a bingo card for my short stories, and so Silver Blaze will count for color. So I've already got one marked off for that as well. Now, I've read a couple books from the library that I want to tell you about, and here's where you might think I'm a little bit weird, but I'm not counting these library books for March Mystery Madness, even though they fit the prompts, but the reason is because I wanted to read from my own shelves for March Mystery Madness, so those are the books that I'm going to count toward prompts, and any library books that I read are just going to be bonus. So I read The Stranger Diaries by Ellie Griffiths. This was really fun. This is very much gothic elements that I loved, and it takes place in Sussex, I think, so right on the coast, and it was really fun. It takes place in October. And it's called A Haunting Modern Gothic Mystery, and I would agree it very much was. Claire Cassidy is an high school English teacher, and she's got a specialization in a Gothic writer called R.M. Holland, who wrote a story called The Stranger. And the book opens, and one of Claire's colleagues has been murdered. And so this is a story that's told in the present tense with 3 narrators, 3 first-person narrators. Claire is one, Claire's daughter Georgia is the other. Georgia is a teenager, she's 15 in the book. And then the detective Harbinder, the detective investigating is called Harbinder, so you get those 3 first-person narrations throughout the story. So yeah, I quite enjoyed this one. There were lots of books mentioned. There were some quotes in here, and I approved of all the books. So they talked about Jane Eyre. They talked a lot about Wilkie Collins, and I strongly approved. There was a quote from No Name. There was a quote from Armandale, and then they talked a lot about The Woman in White. And part of that was Claire saying that that's her favorite book. So, you know, I love Claire because The Woman in White is my favorite book too. They mentioned The Hound of the Baskervilles, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, P.G. Wodehouse, and Georgette Hare. So I loved that. I loved all the book references. And yeah, there are some diary entries in Claire's narration. She keeps a diary, and that's actually an important part of the story. And so you get some of her diary entries throughout. And yeah, this was just a really fun read. So if you like a good ghost story, a good gothic, you might want to check out The Stranger Diaries by Ellie Griffiths. And then I also read November Rain by Maureen Jennings. This is the second book in her Paradise Cafe series. This is set in Toronto in 1936, and I really liked this one too. The first book is called Heat Wave, so if any of you are looking for books that will fit the weather prompt, both of the books in this series would count, Heat Wave or November Rain. The main character is Charlotte, and she, in the first book, she gets a job with Mr. Gilmore at his detective agency. And in this one, Mr. Gilmore is away in Europe on a trip, and she's on her own. And she gets asked by a Mrs. Jessup to look into the death of her son. Her son is a veteran from the First World War who came home horribly disfigured, and the police have said that his death was a suicide, and Mrs. Jessup wants Charlotte to investigate and find out if that's true or if there was more going on. Then she also gets hired by a man who runs a women's clothing factory to go in undercover and find out if they're planning to set up a union or possibly go on strike. And I just really love this. I love the time period. I love that it's set in Toronto. I love Maureen Jennings' writing. I know I'll always enjoy her stories. She also wrote the Detective Murdoch mysteries that take place at the turn of the century, Toronto. And yeah, this was just really, really fun. I enjoy Charlotte as a character. She lives with her grandpa, and yeah, it was so good. It's interesting that it's 1936, so you get a lot of the depression that was happening is an important part of the story. You also, in this one especially, you see that there are still repercussions from the First World War, even though it has been, you know, what, 12 years, 18 years? I'm not good at my math. But you get, you know, the soldiers who have come back wounded and disfigured and traumatized, who have a hard time finding a job or keeping a job. But you also are aware of the widows of the soldiers who never came home and how difficult life is for them. And there was a really interesting part in here, and it was such a vivid historical detail that it makes me wonder if it's true. And she's talking about this blue wrought iron bench. And she said right after the war, the city council had some of the park benches painted blue. The mutilated and the disfigured veterans were expected to sit there so passers-by could be warned of what they might see as they walked by or tried to take a seat. I was only 13 at the time, but I still remembered them. That's such a specific detail that it seems to me that that would be true. If anybody knows if that was true in Toronto after World War I, let me know in the comment section down below, because I find that so fascinating. It's sad. It's sad to me that that happened. So yeah, November Rain. Really, really good. I also reviewed a book for Book Sirens, and this was Murder in the Churchyard by Catherine Coles, and I'll put the picture here. This is the third in her Tommy and Evelyn Christie series, and I really love this series, and this book so far is my favorite in the series. It was really, really fun. So this is a historical cozy series, historical cozy mystery series set in Yorkshire in the 20s. And Tommy and Evelyn are a married couple, and Tommy is a former police officer who is now the new Earl of Northmore. So that's a really interesting factor in the stories. He never expected to be the Earl, but because of deaths in the family, it has fallen to him, and so his life is so different now. His wife Evelyn, of course, Tommy was also a soldier in World War I. And his wife Evelyn, while he was away, she joined the police force during the war as a WPC, and then of course had to quit when the war ended. So they both have experience in the police force, and of course she is now also adjusting to being the lady of the manor. So I love that setup for the series. In this particular one in the series, a body is found on Sunday morning in the graveyard. And there has been a heavy snowfall. The village is cut off. The telephone lines are down. And so the police can't come in and help them. And Tommy, as a former police officer, also as the Earl and the Lord of the Manor, is trying to do certain investigations, preserve evidence for the police when they arrive. And it was just great. So they ended up staying in the village because it was easier than trying to get back and forth to their manor house. And so it was definitely isolated, closed circle, a slightly larger circle because it was the village, but it was so good. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was my kind of mystery. It had a good amount of suspects. There was some red herrings. There was great clues. You learned a lot about the people in the village, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. So if you like a good historical mystery post World War I, yeah, you might want to check out Catherine Cole's Tommy and Evelyn Christie series. All right, and then there's a couple of books that that I'm in the middle of, as I said. So I'm finishing Death in Springtime, and I have also started Dorothy L. Sayers' Strong Poison. This is the book of the month in Julie, the Hungry Bookworm, has a channel on a Discord or a server or whatever, and this is the book that we're reading this month, and this is a reread for me, but it's super fun. I really enjoy it. I love Dorothy L. Sayers, and this one has a great first sentence too. There were crimson roses on the bench. They looked like splashes of blood. Yeah. So, and I'm going to keep reading in my vintage mystery short story collection. So that's that. I think I had a pretty good week. I think I kicked off March Mystery Madness strong, and I'm just loving what I'm reading, and I'm loving the participation and the conversation that's going on Instagram, on Twitter, on Discord, and of course here on BookTube. So before I say goodbye, let's do the next round in our March Mystery Madness manuscript matchup, M&M manuscript matchup. So I'm going to give it a good shake. And let's see what we get. First up is brown, and that gives us the miscellaneous column. Ooh, so what are we going to get? I love the miscellaneous column. Blue. Blue gives us animal. Now that's funny because we've already had that one, but you know what? That's the way this game goes. So the book has to have an animal in it on the cover, something to do with an animal. All right, our next one is green, and that gives us time period. And green again, which is acceptable, and that gives us 1950 to 1980, which we've also already had before. So for this next round, we need to find a book that has something to do with an animal and that was either written or set between 1950 and 1980. Good luck to you, and I will see you in my next video soon. Bye.